The Adirondacks. Over 6 million acres. Over 3,000 lakes and ponds. More than 30,000 miles of rivers and streams, a vast amount of which are still wild. This is the natural home of the brook trout, lake trout, and Atlantic salmon, the heritage strains. Their DNA have never been tampered with by stocked fish. They've been here since the last ice age, fighting to survive against both Mother Nature and humans alike. Long, brutal winters, rising summer water temperatures, overfishing accompanied by the stripping of forest as industry demanded. Acid rain produced by industry wiped out nearly half of brook trout heritage strains unique to the Adirondacks and devastated others. Of the known heritage strains, only some remain, and the ones that are gone because of us, not natural causes. But because of policies like the Clean Air Act of 1970, over 40 years later, the Adirondacks and its brook trout are recovering from catastrophic acid rain damage. A lot is known about the native fish, but still more is waiting to be discovered. There was always the romance that they never really totally disappeared and that someday they would return. And they are returning. However, with this recovery comes questions. What is out there? How far do some of these remaining heritage strains reach? How have they survived what man and Mother Nature have thrown at them? Are there more we don't know about? And more importantly, how do we protect them? Trout Power is a non-profit organization that was established by a group of anglers that banded together to aid in the discovery and protection of wild brook trout in the Adirondack Park.
There always was, in the heart of this whole thing, even though it started with the West Canada, there's this love of the Adirondacks. And when we talk about wild fish, native fish, there's really only a few fish that are native to New York and where we are in the Adirondacks, and one of them is a brook trout, which if you're a fly angler, I think that they are this thing that doesn't have to be big. They're just special. You know, you don't if you're a brook trout fisherman, you don't necessarily need to go catch a big one. Is there a drive to go get a big one? Yeah, but they're just so special that you just want to be in the water where they are. So this whole thing in regards to catching these fish, getting fin clips, working with the New York State Museum, working with Cornell, working with Trout Unlimited, working with Sagamore, working with great people, great friends, and working together, but getting facts, it became very appealing to a lot of people, and that it's fun.
And when are you gonna try to be back so I know when to actually get a search party?
Dinner?
Yeah, I'd like to eat dinner. Okay, so is that what it is?
Right.
6:30?
When I started this work, and what I always tell people that I work with who I'm collaborating with, who are either collecting fin clips because they want to know if a watershed is native or stocked, is to go as far up the watershed as you can, because usually these barriers impede the gene flow from the stocking site, whether it be a waterfall or just even an elevation gradient where it's difficult for the fish to make it upstream all the way. So going as far upstream as you can is usually your best bet to get samples from the native strain if stocking has occurred and hasn't completely taken hold throughout the entire population.
When that came through and said that that area up there is very thick, you're gonna need a compass and a map
And a buddy.
and it's gonna be hard work. I was like, yeah, I was already down for it, and I said I'd like to go up there, and Jimmy was like, let's do it. So we before we even got here, we had already made up our mind that we were going up there. So I don't think it was definitely hard work, but it was worth it to try to. I mean, our goal was to try to get as many samples up there on each fork as we could, and that's what we were going to come back with, the full vials from each of those, because we knew that nobody else was going to do it. We certainly did.
Glad we did it.
Yeah, we certainly didn't know. We didn't know what to expect. We didn't know that we were going to be a part of something that important, and we knew it was something unique, but to have it turn out the way that it did, it was very unexpected, and it was very, very cool to be a part of it. So.
And then we saw the river, and that's all our brains could focus on. Where's the fish?
Brook trout are a bellwether species. You know, they are the canary in the coal mine. If they're here, which they certainly are here, you know, that's telling us that this is pristine water, a beautiful watershed. And as you guys know, if you've trooped around here with us all weekend, it's a special place. We were introduced to Dr. Gerster's book that was written between 1895 through 1898, and it's called his diary, or Notes on the Adirondacks. And he's chronicled this, where we're actually sitting, has been chronicled well over 100 years now of the fish that he was catching, the brook trout. There was no stocking or anything then, and these fish were put here by God.
I mean, that's a beautiful fish.
Oh yeah, isn't it?
You know what I'm saying?
Isn't it though?
Middle of
Oh
nowhere.
yeah, that is a beautiful fish. Well, when I used to fish Lost Brook, 10, 11 inches was a whopper.
Yeah, I mean, that's
6 inches were the norm.
6, 7 inch fish, and I can see.
Yeah.
At 5, observed with pleasure the promise of a bright morning. Breakfast was dispatched hastily, and at 6 a.m. I was up to my waist in the pool, and it was a pleasure to see the fine large ship of fish leap from my fly. By 9 o'clock, I had 23 good trout on the string, had lost 2 flies, and had used only 1 worm. to coax an old red-bellied fellow that was playing with my flies, jumping around them, but evidently not sufficiently tempted to have a taste of them. So I stuck a fat worm on the dropper and, sinking the cast a little, had him hooked in a twinkling. Now here comes the complication. While playing this fellow, another fine big fish snapped into my stretcher, my tail fly. And here I had two of them to land, which to accomplish safely was not easy at all. When I had netted number one and taken the fly out of his jaw, number two made a savage rush and sunk the hook I held into my thumb. And we three had a lively time of it for a while. Quickly taking the leader into my teeth, so he's got the thumb with the hook in it, and the fish is just all over the place. So he takes the leader into his teeth to take the pressure off his thumb from the vicious tuggings of the fanning. I quickly put the cleat of my string through the gill of number one. Okay, so then he had him safely hanging from his belt. Then I tore the hook out of my thumb and turned my attention in ghoulish glee to number two, bringing the spring of my rod to bear well. I released the leader from my teeth and now could easily net the fish who had made desperate rushes around and between my legs. And although the day was young and the fish still biting, I made this glorious episode the closing feature of this fishing. Total catch out of this pool, 30 trout weighing 20 pounds.
Oh my.
Never been able to figure out, he had, okay, he nets the fish. He's got, he's taking the hook out of the fish in the net, and the other guy sinks his hook into it. So here he is, got fish in the net, he's got this, okay, he's got that. Now, what is he doing with his rod? Where is his rod?
Under his armpit.
Under his armpit, between his knees.
I don't know.
What year is this?
Excuse me?
What year is this?
1895.
Wow.
I'm sorry, no, 1897.
That's cool.
1897.
Yeah. Wow, neat.
I'm not a professional, but I got myself really immersed in Dr. Gerster's vacations. I guess it's a 19th century script that he had, which is a little difficult to get used to, but I got used to it pretty quickly, so that wasn't bad. But a lot of cross-outs, and then full of sketches. Every once in a while, you have a little tuft of moose hair in there, or stuff like that. So it was wonderful. So, okay, so 10 years go by, and I'm retiring from my work in New York, and so then my wife and I started working on this, and I'm a total ignoramus in the computer age, and so she taught me how to use a word processor. So it took me, I was still working actually when I started transcribing. It took me 2 or 3 years to transcribe 200 pages handwritten per volume, so it's a total of 400. And so that took me a long time. I finally transcribed it and gave it to the museum, and then I said, if you're going to publish it, and you want me to work on that, I'd love to do that. So another few years go by. By then I really am retired, and then I can. So then I started doing all the notes and stuff, and looking into it carefully, and we ended up publishing the first volume about 12 years ago, 15 years ago, and then 5 years go by, and we published the second. Getting back to the vulnerability of brook trout, and they are vulnerable. I mean, they've been pushed back and pushed back through warmer waters, through
Competing species,
to overfishing, to all sorts of influences. They don't have the staying power that browns and rainbows do, particularly browns. But there are native, there are native fish, but they're very vulnerable. So even today, it's the private club that owns a couple of thousand acres that has the fishing. Mm-hmm. And what you discovered here, in essence, is a private club because it hasn't been explored. It's still pretty, unexplored.
Still pretty virgin.
It's
Yep.
still pretty virgin. So you're going to open it up, and maybe you can. I don't know.
So the fact that Trout Power is going out and helping work on a project like this is fantastic, because often one of the biggest hurdles with science is time and money, and it's not always efficient for someone who's working on this large project like me to go out and collect all of these fin clips from a given area and look at it. So any help that we can get from a private organization or otherwise to work on this science is greatly appreciated and is a huge help, definitely.
If Trout Power means judging the water based on wild fish that are in there, native fish must be even more important. Through Trout Power, we said, well, we've got to get involved on this because we think that there should be eyes on it in regards to what we should do to it because of the brook trout that are there, and that we believe that maybe they are native. And again, when you get into these conversations, things get anecdotal really quick, and it's like, well, they're not, they're stocked, or they're not really real, or whatever. And our mentality is prove it.
We thought that, well, maybe if we go way up Lost Brook, we'll actually find it's like kind of some purebred native fish. Well, I'm here to tell you that we are extremely proud that all the fish that we caught, every fin clip, every fish was a native fish.
Citizen science, generally speaking, has been somewhat effective and increasingly more appreciated because crowdsourcing is the way to get at large samples of data that's generally harder to get or harder to pay to get. In our case, in the case of Trout Power, the citizen science that we're doing here is extremely unique because we're able to get genetic DNA sampling from wild trout and get quantities of it because of the citizen science objective or method that would otherwise not be possible. If you noticed in the presentation that Jordan did last night, the N, or the sample size for our work, is significantly higher than many of the other sampling that's been done, genetic sampling that's been done, and that's because of citizen science. The other projects have a much smaller sample size because they don't have volunteers who've been properly trained and care about doing it properly to go out and get samples. And so our data, in terms of its usefulness and sort of the amount of intrigue that's associated with it, I think is higher quality than the data that was probably paid to be obtained by biologists and staffers and interns and so forth. Not that their work is bad, it's just this model is economic and efficient because we have super motivated volunteers that are ready to go into the most gnarly habitat, volunteer to do it, and get the fin clips.
We have a dedicated bunch of about 20 guys are here this weekend. An incredible amount of effort to hike into some of the real wilderness backcountry, and we've all caught dozens of these beautiful little jewels about that big. So we know they're wild. It's obvious that they're wild.
Through this weekend of doing what we're doing, it's been amazing to see the passion from everyone just because of their love of this place and the love of the fish. So tournament, creel study, whatever you want to call it, I don't want to be corny, but it's really love and passion about brook trout and the Adirondacks that has brought everyone together. And I have to say that the foundation of this is extremely strong because people will fight for it because they love it.
What are termed heritage strains, which are strains that are native to New York, which are believed to have not been influenced by stocking. And New York State has a very long history of supplemental stocking to support brook trout as a sports fishery. So this has been going on for 2 centuries. The DEC runs roughly 5 hatcheries, and they stock over 1 million pounds of fish annually. So as you would expect, there's been a great level of influence on our wild strains of brook trout from these hatchery strains. And right now there's believed to only be less than 10 of these heritage strains left.
Brook trout now are being found in streams by the Trout Power volunteers that years ago were barren of life. Just 20 years ago, these streams had no insects, no fish, and pH levels were equivalent to table vinegar. There was always hope, though. There was always the romance that they never really totally disappeared and that someday they would return. And they are returning.
With this specific area, we could see that the area has been completely swamped by hatchery fish, where that would be a pretty clear signature that we would be able to see in the DNA going all the way up the watershed. We could have a scenario where there's some sort of barrier affecting gene flow, but the hatchery fish have taken hold downstream, so you would basically see one type of fish up to this barrier, and then you would see a genetic signature for another type of fish above that barrier. And then you also have a scenario where perhaps the hatchery and native fish are mixing downstream, but they haven't made it all the way up to the headwaters. So in that scenario, you'd kind of see a gradient of one genetic signal for this hatchery fish slowly fade as you go upstream, while this other native or wild genetic signature increases as you go up into the headwaters.
It's all us. And what we saw, when we see it over and over and over again, and Jimmy and Tim, which we called the Lost Boys, were the guys that had the cojones to try to go up into Lost Brook. That was documented by Dr. Gerster. Durant had a camp back there. It was way back there.
And thank you, because now it's been documented by you two guys following these maniacs up into no man's land.
Yeah. But it doesn't. It certainly becomes everyone's individual passion, and they get involved, and this whole Trout Power thing becomes a we thing.
The beauty of this place, meaning the Adirondack Park in general, to me, it's one of the great human experiments that have just, they've hit it. The folks that started this hundreds of years ago really knocked it out of the park. Because I'm a big believer that nothing can destroy what I consider a perfect, pristine ecosystem. Nothing can destroy it faster than man. The other side of that is nothing can protect it like man. And these fish need us.
With this recovery comes questions. What is out there? How far do some of these remaining heritage strains reach? How have they survived what man and Mother Nature have thrown at them? Are there more we don't know about? And more importantly, how do we protect them?
That's very hard to say because we only have clips. We only have samples from things we collect in the contemporary. So there's no way. Now a lot of ichthyology collections are starting to use ethanol because you can preserve the fish longer, but traditionally formaldehyde has been used, which does not preserve the DNA. So it's difficult to go back and take fish and see if the DNA has changed or not. So that we don't really know. All we can do is go on the areas that we have documented as heritage sites with no stocking history and use those to compare against the hatchery clips to get a grasp on genetically how these fish look.
It's real easy to determine what we've got here. These things are wild and propagating. We know that we've got a perfect ecosystem here, touched by man, but untouched by man at the same time. And I'll venture to say it's benefited by man, and man turning around, realizing some of the foibles, some of the things we've done in the past, and now fixing it. So to be able to come in here, show this, take what I think is going to be an overwhelming success, and I believe we've already had a success by virtue of the fact that we're sitting here speaking to you. And whoever's going to see this is going to understand, is going to be able to reach out to us, and we're going to be able to take what we're doing and get away from, the political nonsense that's just, gets nothing done.
We've indicated, it's not proven beyond all shadow of a doubt, but we've indicated by our work that a system can heal and survive and persist in terms of its wildness. And these wild brook trout, heritage strain brook trout that we've we've identified are evidence of that.
What really is exciting to me for having been here yesterday and last night and this morning is to see this very enthusiastic group of young people who are interested in seeing what's going on in terms of the brook trout population, and for you guys to come back and see that they are existing here, that the pH is back up to 7 point something. And it's working, and the insects are there, and the trout are there. It's just wonderful. My concern is that if what you're doing ends up with the public coming in here in droves, that fishing's going to go downhill just the way you every time. In a democracy, unless you're in an area such as, say, Montana, where the insect life, the minerals in the rivers in Montana produce fantastic insect life year-round. I mean, they're fishing there in the winter.
Right.
Not the case here in the east. So it's a much more vulnerable, more fragile, more, what do you want to call it, closer to the edge trout population here than it is out west.
The whole idea here is that we have a valuable stream resource with an iconic species, brook trout, very vulnerable species, that we're concerned are going to be exploited by people who are using fishing practices that may not be the most sustainable.
Yeah, you'd like to have the results, but you don't want it to be on the front page either. It's just like what they say on the internet. I don't know how many of you go on the Adirondack forum at all or not, but there's a section in there on hunting and fishing, and it's mostly made up of people from this area here, and some newcomer will come in from let's say down in the Hudson Valley someplace, and hope nobody's from the Hudson Valley. But lower Hudson Valley in particular, and they'll come up to the Adirondacks, you know, and where can I go to catch 3-pound brook trout, you know? And boy, that winter net closes up tighter than a clamshell for obvious reasons, you know. You just don't want that kind of information out. And I can relate back to when this was owned by Syracuse University. The number of people that had permission to either fish this lake or what we used to call Sagamore Stream, actually essentially South Inlet, you could count on one hand. You never saw a car pulled in the parking place down there by the first bridge, you know. And now it's a regular thing. Every weekend, 1 or 2 cars parked down there, and a cardboard container of worms down on the pool down where the power plant was.
Sure. You bet.
Establishing this as a blue ribbon native trout fishery. Hey, by the way, it's catch and release is going to put a giant bullseye on this watershed and cause an uptick, probably a surge of pressure that would be problematic.
I think it's wonderful what you guys are doing. No, I really do. I think it's fabulous. My concern is that if you're really successful and you convince the state to make it catch and release, the state's going to put roads in here, or not roads, but going to put trails in here, and people will come in here and not pay too much attention to what your rules are. This is what happened to Little Tupper. Little Tupper had a natural heritage strain. They had signs all over the place. I went there and rode. I didn't fish there, but I took a guide boat over there and spent the day once. They had signs all over the place. No live bait. They don't pay any attention to that. Yeah. They bring a pail of live bait over and they fish, and then at the end of the day, they have a few left. They dump them in the water. I mean, the public. So, it's wonderful what you're doing. I'm just concerned about what's going to happen to the fishery in due course.
How do you change their behaviors? Well, you don't change their behaviors necessarily by doing DNA sampling. You do other things that sort of adjust those fishing behaviors, including create, catch, and release, and so forth. But doing that may have unintended consequences. So one study is an impact study. We need to understand exactly who's using this resource, what kind of uses are they engaged in, what are their interests, what are their concerns, what would be the barriers to them adopting practices that would be more sustainable for a vulnerable fish, a vulnerable population of fish. Doesn't need to be fly fishing only, it just needs to be, respected. And if there are suggestions for ways that you can capture these fish that include barbless hooks and catch and release, great, more education. What we don't want to do is falsely put a magnet on this thing and draw all the people away from, for example, the West Branch of the Ausable or something to here, thinking that this is another blue ribbon fishery, because it's an awesome fishery, but it is not a blue ribbon trophy trout place. So to me, the point will be education. The little signage, kiosks at the entry points, and increasing awareness of the importance of this fish as a state fish and its heritage strain and the work that we've uncovered. I think that most people, if they were to read that or got a pamphlet about that or saw it on an internet or an app, would probably do the right thing in terms of the way they use that resource. We can look to history. We can look to the work of Arpad Gerster, who talked about this place, and Durant, who built this place, and find clues of where we might go looking for these sort of pools of persistence, pools of resilience in the ecosystem. Go there and work on it as a team like we have with the citizen science, and actually come up with something super positive as a result of having done that. It's positive to know that the cold water is there, that the clean water is there, that the fish that are indicators of a healthy system are there, clearly the benthic invertebrates and so forth that they eat are there, all those indicators of a good system there, and lo and behold, here's Sagamore. Here's humans enjoying and being a part of that system. So the second takeaway message for me is we humans can continue to work on reimagining ourselves as part of ecosystems, not separate from them, not exempt from their rules.
There it is. Sweet. It's incredible up here. It's just a breathtaking place. It's the most wild place that we've been to, that I've been to, and it's our second trip up here. You know, we were unsure if there were really fish up here. We came up in the spring, it was blown out, and we had no luck. And now it's a whole other world. We found fish all the way up so far, and we've seen great signs, and it's exactly what we hoped it would be.
How about the fish? Size?
Well, they're no monsters, but we've been catching these just beautiful, just classic Lost Brook trout. There's gorgeous colors, especially this time of year.
We've got to find a way to build some awareness and use trout as a metric to judge the quality of the water. So our mission is to change the world in regards to the way people look at clean water, not necessarily by how clear the water is, but by the trout that live in it. And at the center, at the focus of this, at the foundation of this is wild fish. So if the fish can take care of themselves and they don't have to be stocked, then the ecosystem is in good shape.